She tells him to stop being petty and get back to the bugs, informing him that story changes will require model adjustments. She questions if Deculin is really just an intermediate boss since he seems so easy to kill. She explains that Deculin's power grows with the story, and the game's difficulty hinges on player choices before dropping a bombshell. The character model for Deculin was based on Woojin himself. Stunned, he asks if she's serious, and she points out their similar looks and personalities, a comparison he vehemently denies by citing Deculin's dying words. Changing the subject, she asks about his experience with the game. He admits it's fun, but the pressure is immense. As she leaves to meet her waiting boyfriend, she wishes him good luck. Left alone, Woojin decides to test the Deculin character one more time, grumbling about the artist making the villain look like him. He examines the character's attributes, a combination of whiz kid and average mage, which, coupled with arrogance and a noble background, resulted in a terrible personality. He finds Deculin barely human and notes that the character is already surrounded by enemies who hate him. Feeling a strange connection since the character is modeled after him, he decides to add a new, inconspicuous attribute: comprehension, hoping it will grant the character some empathy. He gets carried away, adding a slew of other powerful attributes like wealthy, Mida's touch, sharp eyesight, and Iron Man. Feeling a bit ashamed of his additions, he decides to revert the changes to avoid creating problems, but is startled by an email notification. It's from the story writer, who cryptically tells him to look out the window. He looks outside and is horrified to see a massive, swirling vortex in the night sky. A brilliant blue light erupts from it, and he feels himself being pulled into a vortex of purple and red energy, losing consciousness as he wonders where he is. He awakens to a sharp pain and a voice warning someone to be wary of Deculin, calling him a vile villain who is merely downplaying his talents. A woman's voice screams at Deculin to get up. He opens his eyes to find a woman berating him for sleeping so long. He realizes with a jolt that it has been a few days since he possessed Deculin's body, an experience that still feels like a dream. She leaves some papers, telling him to get up and move if he doesn't want to be fired. He reflects on the past week since the strange sky appeared. He woke up inside the game world he created, trapped in the body of the game's worst character, a man fated to die. He has become the villain, Deculin. Meanwhile, a young woman with gray hair named Epheren recalls her tragic past. 3 years ago, her father, a brilliant spell interpreter, killed himself in despair after Deculin stole his research and was hailed as a genius for it. Her family lost everything, and she became an orphan vowing revenge. She managed to get into the Imperial University where Deculin is a professor, burning with the knowledge that his fame's a lie built on her father's work. She seethes with anger, believing that prestigious position should have been her father's. She wants to kill him, but knows she must prepare for the perfect revenge. In a grand lecture hall, Deculin begins his class, introducing himself as a monarch mage. He finds the lecture surprisingly easy. Despite his unfamiliarity with magic theory, the comprehension attribute allows him to perfectly understand the script. His innate noble traits of overpowering grace and elitism command the student's focus effortlessly. As he lectures on mana storage, he advises that those without talent must choose and focus, a statement Epheren finds deeply ironic. Finishing the lecture, he notices a strange line in the script he was not meant to read aloud, a mistake the original Deculin wouldn't have made. Just as he is about to dismiss the class, Epheren stands up and challenges him, asking the genius spell interpreter to analyze a mysterious spell found in the dorms. Deculin, internally panicking because his comprehension skill has drained his mana down to 2,005 out of 375, rebuffs her for her lack of etiquette, refusing to answer a question from someone who hasn't stated their name and affiliation. The other students snicker as Epheren is left speechless. She persists, pleading for him to wait and materializing the spell's glowing green form for him to analyze. Just looking at it drains his mana down to a mere 360. With what little he has left, he coolly identifies it as barrier magic, specifically a bewitchment-type spell meant to trap them before dismissing the matter. A side quest complete window pops up. Later in the university cafeteria, Epheren fumes over how Deculin twisted the situation to make her look like a fool. A friend rushes over to her, excitedly reporting that his analysis was correct. The spell was indeed a real barrier. Epheren is stunned, and her friend marvels at Deculin's genius for identifying it without any parameters, unknowingly increasing Epheren's frustration as she realizes she only bolstered her enemy's reputation. She looks at the syllabus for his class, resolving to learn more about her foe. Later, Deculin is confronted by his fiancée, Julie, who asks if he's trying to run from his promise again. He feigns memory loss from a fever, so she reminds him of his vow, to confess his pretenses and arrogance to the world, after which she would stay with him. A flashback reveals their families arranged their marriage, a loveless union Julie accepted until she discovered Deculin was a fraud who had lied about his talents. His lies went against her convictions as a knight. In the present, Deculin agrees to her terms, just as he had in the past, but this time she draws her sword, questioning if he ever intended to keep his promise. The story then shifts to Deculin walking through the Imperial University's Magic Tower campus. He admires the scenery his development team created, wishing he could experience it in a different body, when he's suddenly knocked over by a student named Alan. Alan, flustered, leads him to his office with a list of sponsorships for new mages. Deculin scans the list, and thanks to his wealthy magnate and sharp eyesight attributes, he sees one name shining with golden potential. He knows this person is a valuable asset. However, he is reminded of his inescapable fate. Villain's fate, an attribute ensuring the world wants him dead, and the condition for his fiancée to break their engagement is his murder. He recalls the countless ways Deculin dies in the game, by wand, sword, poison, and bomb. He knows he must make different choices than the original Deculin if he wants to survive. His only way out is to become strong. He knows his own talents are average, but his unique attributes are his only hope. He decides to master manipulation magic, and using his comprehension, the knowledge of basic telekinesis floods his mind from a textbook. He successfully levitates a quill, having memorized the spell, but he knows this basic magic isn't enough. He conceives a daring plan, to engrave magic circles all over his body. Normally, this would overload and destroy a mage, but his Iron Man attribute will allow him to withstand the immense strain. He begins the process and is immediately racked by unimaginable pain, feeling his bones break and muscles tear, yet he endures it silently, with the elegance of a true noble. The attempt fails due to insufficient mana, leaving him with only 1 point remaining, but he succeeds in creating a single magic circle on his shoulder. He calculates it will take 2 weeks to complete the process for his whole body. A month later, during his first lecture, he sends his students into a forest, instructing them via a sign to bring him any result from the Elementrich area. Efren grumbles about his irresponsibility when she bumps into a blonde girl, Sylvia Alade, who doesn't seem to recognize her. Efren recalls how the Alade family threatened her years ago. She is further enraged when she sees Sylvia absorbing all the mana she had gathered. She confronts Sylvia, accusing her of pretending not to know her out of fear. Sylvia coolly replies that while she doesn't know Efren, she knows of her father, remarking that she heard the cocky former noble died. Efren's rage erupts, green mana swirling violently around her as she screams at Sylvia to repeat her words. An explosion of energy knocks everyone back. As Efren grabs Sylvia's collar, a void of chaotic pink energy forms where their mana clashed, sucking in everything around them. A student shouts that it's going to explode, which would kill everyone with shrapnel. Just as the void implodes, a figure appears in its place. It is Deculin who has intervened. At the subsequent disciplinary meeting, the professors are clearly biased towards the influential Sylvia. Deculin sees the scarlet energy of his villain's fate flaring around Efren and knows he must change the outcome to avoid his own death. When Efren refuses to explain why she fought, unable to speak of Sylvia's insult in front of her enemy Deculin, the professors call for her expulsion. Sylvia gives a simple explanation that she accidentally destroyed Efren's work. As the professors side with Sylvia, Efren feels a chilling coldness, realizing she has no one to defend her. However, when the chairwoman asks for his opinion, Deculin turns to Sylvia and asks if she truly believes she had no fault in the incident. Everyone is stunned into silence. He declares the matter closed, stating that kids are meant to fight and that no disciplinary action will be taken. As Efren leaves, utterly bewildered by his actions, she stops him. She asks if he remembers her father, Luna, and if he knows the man suffered his whole life under him before he died, her question hanging heavy with accusation. Efren confronts Deculin, telling him there is something she wants to ask. He thinks to himself that this was expected. Efren's thoughts race as she steels herself, needing to know if he remembers the Luna family and how her father died because of his delusions. She worries that if he does remember, he might rescind the verdict just to protect himself, but the alternative, that he doesn't remember her father at all, would be even more heartbreaking. Before she can voice her question, Deculin speaks, telling her she doesn't have to ask and that she shouldn't waste her potential on things of the past. He walks away, leaving her stunned, and she concludes that she knew it. Efren realizes that Deculin must remember her and her father, otherwise he would have no reason to help her, leading her to believe he felt some responsibility and helped her out of pity. A sense of relief washes over her. The fact that he didn't forget is enough for her for now. As she stands there, a system notification appears before Deculine, informing him that he overcame a death variable and gained 2 store currency. Elsewhere, Sylvia is told by her father, Gilthian, that she doesn't need to worry about Eferen Luna anymore. He explains that while Eferen has talent, she missed her window of opportunity. The scene flashes back 10 years to the Academy's aptitude exam, where young Sylvia first encountered Eferen. Sylvia recalls having to compete with Eferen for the final seat at the Academy. Her father is shown telling Eferen's father to give up on his daughter's entrance, and Sylvia understood then that her family was crushing the Luna family solely for her sake, to ensure she would become the Archmage instead of Eferen. In the present, Gilthian warns Sylvia to be wary of Deculine, reminding her that he was once called a genius and could become formidable again. Sylvia internally agrees, knowing that Deculine had already seen through her trap during the exam. She recalls setting a magical trap to make Eferen's mana explode, but Deculine saw through her plan immediately. Instead of exposing her, he forced a compromise, a silent threat she had no choice but to accept. She had underestimated him, and now she wonders what kind of man he truly is. A few days later, Deculine prepares to leave his manor. He reflects that supporting Eferen was the right choice as it removed a death variable and earned him store currency. While he would prefer to avoid social events, he accepts a side quest to attend the Flower of the New Year event to gain more currency, as he needs at least 5 to access the shop. He arrives at the bustling party and is immediately swarmed by nobles wanting to speak with him, quickly making him regret his decision to attend. He overhears someone mention the name Gainsha and immediately pushes through the crowd to find her, knowing that making her acquaintance is a major opportunity. He finally spots her, a woman with red pigtails and an adventurer's outfit, but just as he's about to approach, he's intercepted by his old university peer, Yahello. Yahello taunts him about the rumors that his research has stalled for 3 years and that his abilities are being questioned. Deculine, unfazed by the provocations since they are true, notices that Gainsha has disappeared during the interruption. Furious at losing his chance, he tells Yahello to stop with the bullshit and fuck off, calling him a rotten cheese-like bastard before walking away. Yahello is left stunned by the insult. Deculine finds Gainsha outside, who tells him she didn't expect his response and had thought he would try to kill her for running away from a secret mission. Deculine calls her concern excessive, thinking internally that only a fool would try to kill a top-class fighter like her, whose attributes include invincible body and master of all martial arts. He realizes his possession of the body prevented the original Deculine's assassination plan from being carried out. Having accomplished his goal of making a connection, he tells her he is leaving and not to worry. She asks if there will be any assassinations, and he calls the idea classless. As he walks away, a notification pops up, informing him a death variable has been avoided and granting him 1 store currency. Inside, onlookers notice Deculine leaving the party early without even acknowledging his fiancée, Julie, fueling rumors of their bad relationship. A week passes, during which Deculine starts a workout routine. He recalls almost dying a few days prior when he attempted to engrave fire control magic onto his existing telekinesis to strengthen it, an incredibly dangerous process that put immense strain on his body. Realizing he needs to be physically stronger, he commits to his new morning routine before heading to work. Facing an audit hearing over his stalled research, he worries about losing his title of professor, which he suspects is a condition for returning home. He heads to his laboratory to find anything that might help and discovers the place in a complete mess. He finds a hidden research paper left by Eferen's father, detailing the Luna family's grudge against Deculine. He decides to complete the research using his comprehension skill and credit her father as a co-author. Suddenly, Eferen appears behind him and tells him to move, only to be shocked when he turns around. Later, Eferen approaches him on campus, asking for his signature to start a club. Deculine, wanting to avoid being bothered repeatedly, agrees and signs the paper, telling her to send the details to his office. Eferen is stunned that he agreed so easily. Her friend Julia is amazed she got the signature, while Eferen wonders why he is being so nice to her, questioning if it's out of guilt or sympathy. During his lecture, Deculine impresses all the students, including a skeptical Sylvia, with his beautiful and insightful demonstrations of magic theory. He explains the paradox of magic. Elites need intuition, but intuition cannot be taught through theory. After the lecture, Sylvia finds her dorm room door vandalized with insults. Amidst the mess, she discovers a sponsorship certificate addressed to her. Believing it to be a prank, Eferen takes it to the magical administration office for verification, only to be utterly shocked when the clerk confirms it's real. Overjoyed and paranoid about her newfound wealth of 100,000 elni, she frantically packs an emergency suitcase. After slapping herself to confirm she's not dreaming, she is moved to tears, believing that someone finally noticed her talents and that the world is still kind. Meanwhile, Dekulin attends the Schatzenjewel auction. He is soon confronted by his fiancée, Julie, who criticizes him for sending 2 debutantes to the disciplinary committee. She warns him his sins will haunt him and gives him her last advice, not to repeat his past mistakes, a line Dekulin recognizes from the game as her signal to end their relationship. He is inwardly pleased, as he doesn't want to get married and is wary of the many death variables surrounding her. When he questions her presence at an auction, she becomes flustered and insists she is there to buy something. The auction begins, and Dekulin uses his wealthy magnate ability to identify undervalued items, bidding on them as guest 777 and winning multiple lots, much to the crowd's amazement and Julie's disdain. Finally, the Snowflare Stone, one of the 10 rarest metals in the world, is presented. Both Dekulin and Julie recognize its value, and Julie resolves to win it. The bidding quickly escalates. Just as it seems Julie has won with a bid of 30 million, guest 777, Dekulin bids 31 million. Furious, Julie asks why he's doing this as she raises her bid to 32 million. The auctioneer's final call rings out as the Snowflare Stone is sold for 42 million elni to guest number 777. The crowd applauds, with onlookers commenting that Professor Dekulin won the exciting bid, making it the most competitive auction ever. A woman with white hair, Julie, watches with a pained expression as others note that Professor Dekulin works so hard to give gifts to his fiancée. Her thoughts drift back to a similar feeling of humiliation from the previous year, remembering how he once tried to impress her with a lavish display of wealth on their engagement day. To her, it wasn't a gesture of affection but a boast of his greatness, a moment of profound humiliation as he failed to understand what she truly wanted from him. Back in the present, Dekulin approaches her. She clenches her fists, her voice trembling as she asks how long he intends to insult her. To her utter shock, instead of another boast, he simply offers an apology. Confused, she stares at him as he excuses himself and walks away, leaving her to wonder what he could possibly be sorry for. The Dekulin she knew would never apologize, and her mind races trying to understand his sudden change in behavior. Just then, her sister, Josephine, arrives and calls out to her. Later, as Dekulin rides home in his car, he thinks about Julie's likely anger over the purchase and finds it unexpected that no death variable appeared. Arriving at his estate, he muses on how terrible the original Dekulin must have been to have driven Julie to murder him in the original story. The maids inform him that Miss Uriel is home. Uriel immediately confronts him, throwing down a document and furiously demanding to know if he used the money meant for the mines. She calls him garbage, screaming that she isn't there just to clean up his messes. Her voice cracks as she describes how she and the workers are struggling to keep the estate afloat while he just spent an enormous sum of money. A furious red aura envelops her as she roars at him, questioning what kind of person gambles with the estate's money. A system notification, Villain's Fate, activates as her rage peaks. Dekulin notices both the red aura of a death flag and a golden light of a wealthy magnate trait. Realizing that surviving this encounter will lead to great profit, he calmly tells her not to worry, which only infuriates her more. She screams that she has sacrificed her own life, giving up university and relationships, all for the estate he is ruining. In a surprising move, Dekulin declares that he will give her the position of household head. Uriel is stunned into disbelief, accusing him of lying. He calmly states that he does not lie and offers to swear a mage oath, a magically binding vow that would kill him if broken. Convinced by his seriousness, she accepts, warning him that she will kill him herself if he goes back on his word. After she storms out, a system message confirms he has overcome the death variable and earned store currency. As he breathes a sigh of relief, a woman named Gainsha emerges from the shadows, commenting that she witnessed the whole shocking exchange. She then reveals a startling piece of information not present in the original game. Uriel has no Euclean blood in her at all. Later, Gainsha clarifies that Dekulin himself had requested the investigation into their blood relations. Dekulin states that regardless of blood, Uriel is still Uriel, and Gainsha agrees to protect this secret. Before leaving, she warns him that the infamous criminal group, the Six Snakeheads, has started to move, targeting items from the auction, and he must be on guard. The next day at the University Magic Tower, Dekulin reviews the system store, noting he can now purchase improvements to his mana quality, but lacks the necessary currency. He knows he must strengthen himself, feeling that his current combat strength is lacking compared to the game's major villains. His assistant, Alan, interrupts, bringing a newspaper with a warning about the wizard killer Lockhart being spotted nearby. Deculine sees this not as a threat, but as an opportunity to earn more store currency. He tells Alan not to worry and then offers him the position of assistant professor, much to Alan's surprise. Later, Deculine goes to the staff-only library and finds a debutant student, Sylvia, inside. A flashback reveals a professor had granted her special permission to enter. Sylvia, whose hobby is studying rare languages, had found a novel written in Ethanol, the language of the fairies. Her excitement turned to humiliation when Deculine appeared and casually read the difficult language she struggled with, a moment that deeply shamed her. The scene shifts to the Mountain of Darkness, where students are undergoing practical training. Deculine volunteers to be the on-duty professor for the week, not for noble reasons, but because he has received a side quest located in the mountain. He knows something horrific is set to happen there at night. 9 hours later, near a cafe street, some students hear a scream. A young mage named Epheren insists on investigating, running toward the sound despite her friends' pleas to stop. She suddenly finds herself in a dark, warped version of the street. She hears another cry for help and rushes forward, finding a woman being attacked by a shadowy figure. Before she can act, Deculine appears behind her. He tells her to look again, revealing that the woman is a grotesque demon. The creature, its illusion broken, lunges forward. Deculine calmly tells Epheren not to interfere and levitates her out of the way. He faces the demon, which is furious at losing its prey. His Eucline blood boils with an innate hostility toward demons, amplifying his power. A system message details the attribute, Eucline, which allows him to purify demonic energy and makes him more aggressive when facing demons. He unleashes his power, effortlessly obliterating the creature. After the demon is vanquished, system notifications confirm the completion of his side quest, granting him store currency and unlocking his Eucline family attribute. He stands over the demon's dissipating remains, recognizing its appearance as the true start of the game's main scenario. The next day, a student named Luna wakes up in the clinic, having no memory of the previous night. She learns that a demon had appeared and that Professor Deculine had saved her from its bewitchment. In the lecture hall, Epheren and her classmates find the room arranged for a special lesson. Deculine enters and makes a surprising announcement. Alan will be his new teaching assistant. Epheren is shocked, recalling how Deculine had historically refused to take on any assistance, which had even hindered her own father's career. The students are given a practical task to solve within 3 hours. Epheren, holding a bracelet inherited from her father, wonders about the connection between him and Deculine. While the prodigy Sylvia finishes the complex task in under 30 minutes, Epheren struggles, her mind filled with distracting thoughts. Hours pass, and one by one, every other student completes the assignment and leaves. Epheren remains the last one, her paper still blank as the 3-hour deadline passes. She spirals into despair, feeling stupid and helpless. To her horror, she realizes Deculine has been waiting the entire time, nearly 6 hours. He approaches her and coldly states that she had a breakdown over a simple assignment. He tells her that a true mage must remain cold and logical, even when resentful or facing rivals. He looks at her with disdain, telling her that with such a weak mind, she will never reach his level. He expresses his disappointment and leaves her alone in the empty hall. His harsh words, however, fail to break her. Instead, a surge of defiance fills her. She declares that she will succeed with or without his approval, and a powerful wave of green mana erupts from her body as she focuses on the task with renewed determination. Meanwhile, Deculine reflects on his actions, acknowledging that spending 6 hours on Epheren was a necessary cost. He knows that for the coming main quest, the Age of Overwhelming Evil, he needs her to grow stronger. He believes that once she overcomes her mental weaknesses, her potential will be immense, even if that growth might one day pose a danger to him. Later, he examines her completed assignment. It is filled with the flaws of a non-academy graduate, yet the quality of the result is worthy of first place. As he's about to return to his residence, he is stopped by a man named Zeit von Bruggen-Freyden. Deculine recognizes him as Julie's older brother and a powerful named character, ranked 3rd in combat strength. He worries that this encounter might be a death variable related to the snowflare stone he purchased. Zeit, however, greets him warmly, expressing concern over the rumors of discord between Deculine and Julie. He cheerfully invites Deculine to a dinner he is arranging for them later that week, leaving Deculine no room to refuse. Deculine realizes Zeit is a man who puts his household above all else, and interfering with his plans could be disastrous. The next day at the Freyden estate, Julie argues with her sister, Josephine, insisting she doesn't want to go to the dinner. She's still upset about the snowflare stone and declares that if Deculine presents her with a sword made from it, she will immediately break off the engagement. Josephine scolds her, reminding her that there is no place for emotion in politics and that she has no other viable suitors. Left alone, Julie practices her swordsmanship, her movements turbulent and reflecting her inner turmoil. Her subordinate, Veron, approaches and comments on her unsteady form. He apologizes for her disgrace, then begins to speak ill of Deculine, calling him an abominable man unsuitable for her. Julie sharply cuts him off, stating that it does not suit a knight to speak ill of another behind their back. She tells Veron not to dirty his hands for her sake and walks away. As she leaves, Veron watches her go, a determined look on his face. He believes he has found the answer to her suffering and a way to prove his loyalty, something only he can do to make her happy. The Elder Assembly convenes under a starry sky, their grand cathedral lit against the dark mountains. An elder reports that a demon has appeared at the Mountain of Darkness. He reminds the others that magecraft was created to crush the demonic, and with demons now appearing, they must take action. He orders a letter to be sent to the 12 sorcerers, summoning them to Berk to answer the call of the assembly. Meanwhile, Deculine has finished organizing the items he bought at the auction. He equips Rufferin's ring for mana recovery and the ancient rune necklace to store mana, deciding to place the rest in a vault as Gainsha suggested. His main problem, however, is the Frost Flame Stone, which refuses to respond to his telekinesis. He knew he wouldn't be able to use it right away, but he didn't expect it to completely resist his magic. He wonders if the stone's own mana is repelling him. Having only been able to admire the expensive item in the game, he has no idea how to properly use it. He decides to try and comprehend it, focusing his power on the glowing blue gem. A system window appears, informing him that his comprehension has risen by a mere 1% at the cost of 2,000 mana. At this rate, he calculates it will take at least a year. Deculine sighs, pondering if this is the best he can do for now. He then decides it's time to get ready to go out, recalling he has the dinner Zeit arranged, and 3 days from now, the death anniversary. The scene shifts to the Von Meschel restaurant, where Deculine is seated for dinner. He hadn't expected to meet Josephine here. He recognizes her as not just Julie's sister, but a dangerous sociopath who runs the undercover intelligence network, Shadow. She is a powerful figure, comparable to Zeit, and the only person she truly cares for is Julie, meaning wronging Julie would incur Josephine's deadly wrath. He feels Josephine's murderous intent, a manifestation of his villain's fate, and realizes how dangerous this death variable is. To survive, he needs to convince her that his feelings for Julie are genuine. The family head asks when they plan to hold the ceremony, noting it's been 3 years since the engagement. Deculine, looking at Julie, states that he will leave the relationship entirely in her hands and is prepared to dissolve the engagement if she does not believe in the marriage. The family head protests, saying it's not so simple and that the elders would not approve, especially since the couple has been so distant. Julie glares at Deculine, demanding a private conversation with him, which the family head grants. As Josephine and the elder leave, Josephine gives a cheerful farewell, wishing them a nice chat. Once they are alone, Julie slams her hand on the table and angrily asks what he is trying to do this time. As she demands to know what he wants, Deculine senses that Josephine is listening from behind the door, realizing her cheerful exit was a ruse to set up a wiretap. He sees this as an opportunity. He tells Julie he simply spoke his truth, but she remains unconvinced. She reminds him of how he used his connections to force their engagement, how he promised to compensate her family's elders, and how he convinced her by claiming that fighting was dangerous. She recounts how he forced her to stop pursuing the imperial order and brazenly suggested she become captain of an order supervised by his own family. When she refused, he spread all kinds of rumors about her. She asks if he's trying to start all that again. Deculine calmly admits that he knows all of this. He acknowledges that he confused obsession for affection and tore down everything around her, so she had no choice but to stay. He says he understands her hatred for him better than anyone and promises he won't do that anymore. Julie tells him she won't fall for it, but he continues, saying he knows he's been tying her down. His admission leaves her speechless. He then adds that her own siblings have also gone too far, pushing the engagement for the sake of the family's reputation. He proves he knows her deepest desire by mentioning her dream of becoming a defender, a knight free from family ties who defends only the empire, which stuns her completely. He tells her that he possesses neither honesty nor loyalty and is entirely opposite to the qualities she strives for, making him unsuitable for her. He proposes a deal. They will continue their engagement but never marry. He explains that he cannot simply break it off because of the tangled web of interests, but offers his name as a shield for her to use for as long as she needs, until she is ready to manifest her dream. He asks for only one thing in return, for her to show him her smile once a month. The unexpected and seemingly sincere request leaves Julie blushing and utterly flustered. He watches her reaction, internally noting that he simply said the words she wanted to hear to avoid a death variable, but he can't help but find her flustered state absolutely adorable. Julie, overwhelmed, stammers that she won't fall for his schemes, while Deculline just laughs. As she continues to protest, a system window confirms the death variable has been avoided, rewarding him with 2 store currency. 3 days later, Deculline stands in a cemetery at sunset, noting that the atmosphere alone is enough to arouse one's emotions. He feels his heart melt into the place, not as Deculline, but as his former self, Kim Woojin. This is the place that bears his memories. He is there for the death anniversary of Uara von Fergus Mahanish. A flashback reveals Kim Woojin as a game developer, arguing with his team leader, Uara, who wanted to add a personal Easter egg to Deculline's background. He had argued it would just increase their workload, but she insisted they had to put their hearts into the game, and he eventually gave in. Back in the present, memories of Uara flood his mind. Her praise, her kindness when she gave him her coat on a cold night, her confession of love, and the 7 years they spent together. As he is lost in these painful memories, a man with white hair suddenly appears, declaring he's finally found the filthy mage. Deculline recognizes the man Lockhart. Lockhart's attribute is nullification, a cheat-like ability that negates all magic within his range. He rushes forward, screaming for Deculline to die. However, his punch is stopped cold, caught effortlessly by Deculline, who states that such an attack is meaningless to him. A flashback shows Deculline using his store currency to purchase improvements in mana quality, which not only boosted his mana manipulation, but also his physical body and attributes. The enhancement to his Iron Man trait made him strong enough to easily overpower Lockhart. Defeated and on the ground, Lockhart curses the rotten mages. A system notification confirms Deculline has overcome another death variable. Deculline observes Lockhart's intense rage and his use of the word apostasy, deducing that he belongs to the Bloodshroud race, a people descended from demons and the natural enemies of mages. Deculline calmly tells Lockhart he understands him, acknowledging the oppression his people have faced. He adds, however, that killing an innocent mage would make him a monster just like his oppressors. Lockhart tells him to shut up, but is stunned into silence when Deculline states that he knows the Bloodshroud race is also innocent. Deculline asserts his identity as a Eucline, from a line of honorable nobles who have not lost their dignity. He asks Lockhart if he lost his composure or went berserk, as the Eucline bloodline does when facing true demons. Since he remained calm, it proves Lockhart is not a demon, but human. This display of a true noble's dignity leaves Lockhart speechless. Just then, Imperial Knights arrive. Deculline tells Lockhart he can trust him and should allow himself to be arrested. An Inspector Roper arrives, praising Deculline's incredible kick, and is ready to slap magic cuffs on the prisoner. Deculline calmly instructs them to use a steel wire instead, as magic is useless against Lockhart's nullification ability. Later, at a snowy train station, Deculline is preparing to depart for Bercht, a journey to a place known as the Mage's Grave. He is met by Julie, who has come to see him off. She thanks him for coming all this way, clearly flustered as she remembers his request for her to smile once a month. One of her knights, Veron, introduces himself and assures Deculline of his protection. As Deculline boards the train, he glances back, and Julie, after a moment of hesitation, gives him a small, shy smile. He acknowledges to himself that she kept her promise. Several hours into the journey, his assistant Alan is fast asleep. Deculline reflects on the danger ahead. The summons to Bercht is nicknamed the Mage's Grave because of the frequent train attack event. In the game, one would have to choose the safe train, but since he cut off his underworld connections, he had to rely on his own preparations. He recalls asking a tearfully grateful Alan to join him, surprised by the young mage's ambition. He mentally reviews his preparations, using Mita's touch to enhance his and Alan's clothing with defensive properties and strengthening numerous wood-steel shuriken he's hidden throughout the train car. He hopes his precautions are for naught and the rest of the trip is peaceful. Just as he finishes the thought, a massive explosion rips through the side of the train ahead, derailing it in the snowy landscape. A few days before the departure, Ephraim was studying on the train when Gilthian approached, asking if she wasn't going to put down her book. She explained that she had a lot of assignments from the Magic Tower and had also missed a few classes. He laughed, remarking that even though she was destined to be an archmage, she still worked harder than anyone. She replied that she had to do that much to become one, though her thoughts drifted to wanting to attend more of Deculine's lessons. She then asked her father, Gilthian, why they had left for Burke's summoning assembly so early, suggesting they could have left in a few days. He turned serious, asking if she had heard about how the trip to Burke is known as the Graveyard of Mages. She thought it was just a ghost story, but he gravely informed her that it was not. He explained that whenever there is a summons to Burke, a few mages always lose their lives, recalling a time 15 years ago when 11 died. Long ago, being summoned was a sign of a prestigious family, and attending the assembly would ensure that family's name was engraved in history. However, there was an important rule that a new family would fill the empty space left by any family that was summoned but failed to attend, leading to their permanent expulsion. He asked her what she thought would be an easy way to drag those prestigious families down. She looked horrified as he confirmed her unspoken fear. The journey to Burke, he continued, was like walking on thin ice, a place where aspiring sorcerers aim for the lives of the established ones to take their place. That, he revealed, was the reason they were rushing. He had received intelligence that a group was scheming to attack the later train. Since he was taking her with him, he wanted to be as careful as possible. He reflected that if they were discovered, there would be an issue, but decided he should explain the cruel reality of their world to Sylvia as well. He mused on the nature of the traditional families, questioning if any of them had always held their status, and concluded that if anyone needed to be punished for this custom, it should be all sorcerers, as deaths on the way to this assembly were essentially treated as magical, natural deaths. Back in the present, a massive explosion ripped through the train. Inside a rattling train car, Deculine remained composed as Ephraim frantically pointed outside, shouting that the entire train was suspended in midair. A system notification appeared before Deculine, confirming he had memorized elementary telekinesis. He reflected that having this skill before they left had helped them survive. Ephraim stared in disbelief, wondering aloud if head professors were simply built differently. On the floating debris of the train stood a group of armored assailants, their leader urging them to focus because they would be properly rewarded for succeeding. Suddenly, one of them was violently impaled. Deculine stood calmly amidst the chaos, calling them morons. He unleashed a wave of blue telekinetic energy, tearing through the attackers as they screamed in pain. Ephraim cried out that it was an attack, and Deculine told her to rest for a bit. He stood surrounded by the ethereal blue glow, thinking that these, too, were considered natural deaths. The train car landed with a thud. Deculine felt exhausted, his mana reserves nearly depleted from simultaneously mitigating the explosion and fighting the assailants, a fact confirmed by a system window showing his mana at a mere 10 out of 3, 657. He informed his companion Alan that he had moved the other passengers to a safe place and that they should proceed. He then noticed a change in Alan's gaze, which was different than before, and assumed he must also be surprised by the attack. However, Alan was surrounded by a sinister red aura, a blade of pure energy forming in his hand. A system notification flashed before Deculine, questioning if this was a villain's fate. Deculine wondered if Alan had been hiding this attribute all along. Alan spoke, expressing relief that Deculine had survived because now he had to be the one to kill him personally. The scene shifts to Burke, where Sylvia and her guard knight Sirio are standing. He offered her a local specialty, permanent snow ice cream, but she declined, stating she was sick of it. She asked if everyone was here, and he confirmed that all families except Euclene were present. She seemed to be waiting for someone, but denied it when asked. Later in her room, she murmured Deculine's name while looking out the window. Her mind drifted to a memory of visiting her mother's grave, that of Icelia von Elemin Elaide. She recalled it as just a normal day where she went to talk to her mother. On that same day, she had been complaining about the ridiculous amount of assignments Professor Deculine gave out. While at the cemetery, she heard a sound and saw Deculine's back as he stood before a grave. She found his presence there strange, not thinking of him as someone who would mourn the dead. But then, to her astonishment, she saw that he was crying, shedding tears that she found fascinating. The memory of those tears, like shooting stars, kept plaguing her mind. Recalling her father's warning about the train attack and Deculine's lecture on magic, she decided to attempt something with a mana stone she possessed. Focusing her magic, composed of the 3 primary colors, she used the mana stone as a medium, and the energy began to take shape. She succeeded, creating a small, glowing creature of pure light, which she named Swift. The scene snaps back to the fight on the train wreckage, where Deculine faced his knight, Veron. Veron's attack was blocked by Deculine's telekinetic shield. A system window detailed Deculine's rare trait, Resolute, which granted him unwavering mental power in battle, making him nearly immune to mental interference. It was clear Deculine would never bend in such a situation. Gritting his teeth, Deculine cursed under his breath. He wondered if being cut down would mean the end of the game, if he would simply wake up in his office again, or if this death would be final. As Veron's sword descended, Deculine parried the attack. Veron was stunned, shouting that the very space around them was wavering. A red slash appeared across Deculine's chest. Seeing Deculine's mana was almost gone, Veron saw his chance and pressed his assault. Despite being struck repeatedly, Deculine remained on his feet before finally falling to one knee. After the battle, Veron stood over the defeated Deculine. Deculine asked what just happened, and Veron admitted he didn't know either. Deculine demanded to know why Veron was trying to kill him, as he recalled no animosity between them. Veron replied that it was for the evil deeds Deculine had committed against his liege. He accused Deculine of acting for Julie's sake without her asking, questioning what Julie was to him. A flashback showed Veron protecting Julie from bullies, effortlessly handling them and their indignant mother, who threatened him with trespassing charges. He coolly pointed out that her son was the one trespassing. Veron recalled his lonely childhood, how he was unable to get along with others until his captain, Julie, took care of him. She was always there, helping others and standing against injustice, and his admiration for her grew into love. He acknowledged that his feelings were a burden to her, but he felt he had to kill Deculine, convinced that he would one day cause her destruction. Deculine conceded that Veron was right. In the game's original story, Deculine's actions led to terrible outcomes. However, he insisted that Veron was wrong now because he was going to change that future and prevent Deculine's destructive end. He urged Veron to hold on and trust him, swearing he would never harm Julie. Veron's face twisted in rage, his red aura flaring as he declared that Deculine had no intention of changing his mind. Deculine affirmed this. Veron called him a fool, roaring that his foolish choice would torment Julie forever as he lunged forward. Miles away, Julie, riding with her knights, felt a sudden sense of unease, her thoughts turning to Veron. Back at the cliffside, Sylvia watched the scene from above, thinking that Deculine had killed his guard. She corrected herself, recalling that the knight had attacked first. Her knight, Sirio, arrived to tell her the assembly was about to begin. Meanwhile, at the crash site, Security Bureau Vice Chief Lilia Fremian was briefed on the attack, which she was told was a common occurrence before the Burkt assembly. She learned that Professor Deculine and a guard named Veron were missing. A survivor, Efren, explained that Knight had saved her. The train had been levitated by magic, and there was a second attack, showing a photo of the floating train as proof. Lilia was stunned, wondering if Deculine had lifted the entire train himself. A telepathic message then informed her that Veron was dead. He had failed in his attempt to kill Deculine, who had survived. Just then, a figure emerged from the snowy blizzard. It was Deculine, battered but alive. He told Lilia he had 6 hours left. After he answered her formal questions and confirmed there were other routes to Burkt, she tried to ask about Veron, but Deculine vanished in a burst of speed, likely using acceleration magic. At the assembly hall in Burkt, the great Elder Dezekton addressed the gathered sorcerers. Deculine, who had arrived just in time, recognized the immense mana of the Elder and knew this was the level he had to reach. The roll call began with representatives from the Alade, Bran, Viorad, and Rewind families answering. When Deculine of the Eucline family was called, there was only silence. Dezekton announced that if he was not present after 3 calls, his family would be eliminated. The other mages gossiped, claiming this was expected due to Deculine's lack of talent. Sylvia, sitting among them, felt bothered by their dismissive attitude. As the elder called Deculine's name for the final time, a blinding light filled the hall. The grand doors swung open, and Deculine strode in, his torn clothes doing little to diminish his imposing presence. Sylvia cried out his name in relief. He walked to the center of the room and announced his arrival as Deculine von Grahan-Eucline. The meeting began, with the first matter concerning a demon in the Black Mountain being resolved quickly after Ethensel proposed a plan. During a short break, Deculine reflected on his exhaustion, having no mana or stamina left, yet his appearance remained perfect thanks to his traits. He thought of Alan, resolving to keep his enemy close. The meeting resumed to discuss the sensitive topic of the Bloodshroud sorcerers. Vethan of the Viorad family furiously demanded their eradication, calling them cockroaches. Ethensel calmly countered that they lacked the means to differentiate Bloodshrouds from others, but Vethan insisted they invent a way. He claimed the Bloodshrouds were gathering under a leader, which Ethensel dismissed as mere speculation. She argued their conflict was based on historical misunderstandings, like the Rodrin witch incident and more recently, politics over a mana stone mine. The meeting ended without a conclusion. That night, Gilthian visited Sylvia's room, reminding her of the rule that they stay in separate quarters and warning her of strange magical phenomena at night before leaving. Alone, Sylvia got up for a drink of water, but as she did, her room transformed into a long, dark, unfamiliar hallway. She stood frozen, wondering if she had done something wrong. Sylvia, a blonde woman, apologizes to Deculine for suddenly appearing in the hallway, to which he coldly remarks that incredible magic phenomena always occur within Bercht, and that she should have read the rules properly. Sylvia internally notes his unchanging appearance and unwavering gaze, wondering if it was because he was Deculine that he was able to open the door, just before a terrifying skeletal figure surrounded by purple energy manifests. Later in a practice room, Sylvia demonstrates her magical prowess, first casting flowing flame, then lightning, metallization, and finally goblin fire. For each spell, Deculine impassively confirms she has done a good job. Frustrated by his lack of engagement, Sylvia wonders if she should perform half-heartedly on purpose, but presents another spell anyway. He tells her she's done well, but adds that there is instability in the air magic circle she embedded into the fire. When she asks what her weakness is, Deculine tells her to figure it out herself, reminding her that Ephraim found her own weakness without his help. He advises her to cease her impatience, explaining that time is on her side and that with continued dedication she will improve. He tells her she can work towards her goal one step at a time, reminding her she is one of only 3 people in the world with such talent. Sylvia reflects on the countless insincere compliments she received growing up about her destiny to become an archmage, questioning why Deculine's words feel so different. Elsewhere, Deculine is in his room when his wealthy magnate trait alerts him to a nearby energy source. He ventures into a moonlit forest path, thinking he might find a rare item, and witnesses a massive eruption of purple energy from the ground. A skeletal, ghostly figure wails as it emerges from the earth. Deculine calmly approaches and asks the spirit if it has seen an item with a lot of magic, but it only responds in a strange language. He soon finds a glowing piece of wood in the ground, which a system notification identifies as a purified mana tree fragment, an excellent material for crafting. Deculine is pleased, realizing this material surpasses his expectations and could help him overcome the slump caused by his own ordinary talent, believing a wand made from it could accelerate his growth. At a contentious meeting, Sylvia internally defends Deculine's position on the blood shrouds, believing he is simply stating the obvious, not acting with ulterior motives. The meeting's leader postpones the blood shroud discussion to avoid a stalemate and moves on, with the remaining agenda items being resolved quickly over several days. Deculine reflects that while this outcome benefits his main quest, he has become further estranged from his peers. The next day in Bercht's shopping district, he contemplates the best materials for his new wand when his assistant, Alan, excitedly points out a woman with dark blue hair, calling her his hero for ensuring his safe arrival. The woman, Lockhart, is later seen being arrested by the Imperium Security Bureau for killing innocent mages. When asked if she has anything to say, she remains silent until another figure orders her to activate her power, causing a massive vortex of dark energy to erupt from her. In a separate location, a white-haired woman calls Lockhart an idiot for her rash actions, which could negatively affect their kind. The woman admits she considered killing Lockhart to prevent their group from being exposed, questioning why Lockhart provoked Deculine when they are already monitoring the Euclians. Lockhart asks if they plan to kill them, and the woman replies that while they are only observing for now, they will kill him if he continues to cause trouble. Lockhart firmly tells her not to, calling Deculine a true noble. The white-haired woman scoffs at the idea, claiming to have a long list of his crimes. Lockhart, however, recalls Deculine affirming that blood shrouds are human, not demons, his eyes showing only righteousness, and believes he is different. The white-haired woman reveals that Deculine's ancestors led the slaughter of the blood shrouds, but Lockhart argues that hating the descendants for their ancestors' crimes only proves their enemies right. The woman changes the subject, noting the Emperor's failing health means they must remain quiet and observe the new successor's stance on the blood shrouds, ordering Lockhart to lay low in prison. After the woman leaves, Lockhart is approached by a drunken Ilhelm, who leans in close and says he has something he wants to hear from Deculine's dark soul. Meanwhile, at the order of Freheim, a knight reports to a white-haired woman that her subordinate, Veron, has died during a mission. Her expression hardens as she orders the knight to get ready immediately. A man with blonde hair confronts an opponent of Deculine, angrily reminding him of his past statements about annihilating lowly species like the blood shrouds. Alan tries to defend Deculine, but Deculine himself calmly intervenes, dismissing the opponent's insults by comparing his brain to rotten cheese. The opponent glares, then changes the subject to an upcoming research presentation, vowing to see if his adversary's talk is just for show. Lockhart contemplates how Deculine sides with the blood shrouds despite being wary of everyone else, finding it hard to believe. Later, on a train platform, Deculine and Alan are preparing to leave Burke. Deculine spots Julie, the white-haired knight commander, and expresses his relief that she is safe after hearing about the ambush. Julie thanks him, though her knights mutter resentfully about him being the sole survivor. She tells him she read the news about how he worked with Veron to save the victims and asks him how Veron was. Deculine internally struggles, wanting to tell her the truth that Veron had tried to kill him, but decides against it, knowing the cruel truth would cause her to blame herself and suffer immensely. On the train, Alan complains to Sylvia about the rude glares they received from other survivors, but Deculine advises them to ignore the foolishness of others and gives Sylvia a small gift. When she asks what it is, he says he doesn't know. Exhausted by the whole ordeal, Deculine tells Alan he wants to return home and rest quickly, and the train speeds away from the snowy landscape. A knight reports to Julie that during the train ambush, Deculine and Veron worked together to rescue survivors, but Veron fell to his death during the second attack when the train car overturned, while Deculine's car miraculously clung to the cliff. When Julie asks for any keepsakes, she's told there are none, and the topic of the attacker is dismissed as a forbidden subject. Alone in the snow, Julie mourns her reliable right arm, calling Veron a foolish bastard. At the Euclid mansion, Deculine's sister, Uriel, screams at him for writing another family check, warning that their finances will collapse in 2 months. Deculine, acknowledging the high cost of his new wand, calmly tells her he has a plan to secure more funds. He enters a room full of art pieces he bought at auction and, to Uriel's confusion, places his hand on a vase, activating his Midas Touch ability. He instructs a stunned Uriel to call an appraiser, as he plans to sell the items again. She protests that they will lose money, but he tells her to be quiet and orders his butler to proceed. A system window reveals the vase's potential has been awakened, now possessing the ability to preserve flowers indefinitely and imbue them with healing properties, making it far more valuable. He tells his butler to handle the items with care as he leaves for work, ignoring Uriel's frantic questions. At the university, Epheren and her friends celebrate their magic exploration club becoming official. Their joy is interrupted by the furious Professor Relin, who demands to know who approved such a stupid club. He recognizes Epheren as the lowlife he punished before and berates her for glaring at him, yelling at her to avert her eyes. As he declares that no professor would ever allow such a club, Deculine appears in the doorway, stating that it was him. He confirms that he allowed it and icily asks Professor Relin if he has any complaints, leaving Epheren staring in shock. Deculine confronts the sweating Professor Relin, who quickly backpedals, claiming he was merely concerned that the magic tower was too empty and needed better equipment. Later, during his lecture on magic interference, Deculine ignores the students' gossip about the train incident and announces a practical exercise. He manifests dozens of valuable magic stones, each worth 3,000 elni, and floats them around the room with telekinesis. He challenges the 150 students to interfere with his magic and take a stone, which they can then keep. Deculine is curious to see how his beginner-level telekinesis holds up against the university's top prospects. The students unleash a torrent of magic, but find themselves unable to budge the stones. Epheren, motivated by her dwindling scholarship funds, joins the effort. A student notes in awe that Deculine isn't faltering at all against their combined assault. Deculine himself is surprised by his own power, having not expected the debutants to be completely unable to interfere. Finally, with a great effort, Sylvia manages to secure a stone, earning a good work from Deculine, who declares her the winner. As he asks if there is anyone else and the other students groan in defeat, Epheren cries out that there is one more. With a final burst of energy, she pulls a magic stone towards herself, grinning triumphantly as Sylvia looks on in shock. The students struggle against Deculine's magic, with one grunting and vomiting from the exertion. Deculine calmly tells him to stop, calling him pathetic before instructing the class to take a break and clean up the mess. A fellow student asks Epheren how she managed to succeed when he couldn't, and she explains that she experienced an epiphany while trying to break through Deculine's magic. Another student expresses her jealousy. In the back, Sylvia silently fumes, finding it impossible that the lowest-ranked student could suddenly place second. She wonders if the rumors about Deculine tutoring Epheren were true, and if he had lied to her, glaring at Epheren and calling her an arrogant halfwit in her thoughts. The scene shifts back to the lecture hall, where Deculine addresses the class. He states that while they performed magic interference in the warm-up, there is an easier method, one that the successful students might have already grasped. He reveals this method is true mana interference, a technique focused on understanding and disrupting an opponent's spell rather than just blocking it. He explains its primary limitation is that it only works on spells the user themselves knows, which is why it isn't commonly practiced. He acknowledges that barriers or counterspells are usually more practical, but insists they will use this opportunity to properly understand the technique. The core of it, he explains, is to identify the magic circle's central circuit, which is determined by the spell's type and element, and then to interfere with that specific circuit. He proceeds to demonstrate how to identify the central circuit of a destructive spell called Stormblade All, noting its internal combustion property before moving on to support magic. 2 hours later, he abruptly ends the lecture, stating that time is up even though he hasn't finished the material. He dismisses any potential complaints by saying they wasted his time and tells them to figure out the rest on their own. He reminds them of the upcoming midterms and an open practical, emphasizing the importance of what they learned today. As he departs, the students complain amongst themselves, but one of them, Beck, confronts Efren, calling her the rep of commoners. Her friend tries to intervene, asking Beck why he's starting trouble again and reminding him of his past provocations. Beck sneers, asking Efren if Deculin went easy on her and gifted her a mana stone out of pity since she has no home or parents. Efren's eyes flare with green energy as she warns him not to say another word. Beck taunts her to act on her threat, but as she lunges, her friend holds her back, questioning what she would do if she got punished again. Suddenly, Sylvia approaches Efren and asks for a quick talk. When Efren demands to know what she wants, Sylvia bluntly asks if she's being tutored by Deculin. Efren erupts, shouting that it makes no sense given their hostile relationship and accuses Sylvia of knowing nothing. Sylvia calmly replies that she thinks she's being tutored and then reveals a critical piece of information. Deculin hasn't set foot in a lab for 3 years, not since Efren's father passed away. Efren scoffs, saying of course he hasn't, as he was useless without her genius father. Sylvia counters by informing her that Deculin has been visiting the lab daily for the past 3 months, cleaning it, hiring an assistant, and acquiring new tools. She asks Efren what she thinks this could mean. Efren wonders if he plans to steal her father's research again, but dismisses the thought, believing he isn't capable of continuing it himself. Sylvia admits she doesn't know what he's planning, but says it's clear he's trying to do something. Efren then asks what any of this has to do with her. Sylvia simply states she thought Efren didn't know, and seeing that she does, considers the matter settled before walking away. Days later, the students gather in a grand hall for their next lecture, confused about the venue. As Efren sees over her encounter with Beck, her friend advises her to let it go. Deculin arrives and silences the crowd, announcing that this will be the last practical before midterms, a public practical. He reveals a large audience of onlookers and explains that the students will engage in magic combat, fighting one another using any magic they can, with the condition that they must utilize at least 3 forms of pure elemental magic. He clarifies that victory is not the goal. He will be observing their strengths and weaknesses to guide their improvement, with Professor Relin supervising to prevent injuries. The practical begins, and the students, though initially awkward, soon begin their duels. After one match concludes with Sylvia as the victor, Beck and his cronies mock the defeated commoner. When it is Beck's turn, he chooses Efren as his opponent. Deculin comments that there's no one here to secretly tutor her now. Fed up, Efren retorts that talking trash must be a basic manner for nobles like him, and adds that he looks lame trying to copy Deculin's style. Enraged, Beck screams that he'll help her meet her dead parents and unleashes a massive explosion of light. Her friends cry out her name as the blast consumes her. Beck smirks, but his expression turns to shock as the smoke clears to reveal Efren protected by a massive green energy shield. She calmly quotes a saying she's thought of since joining the tower, that a good beating perfectly suits a noble. She shatters the shield, the force of which sends Beck flying into the air with a scream. He crashes to the ground, defeated. Efren stands over him, asking how it feels to be destroyed by her. As she is declared the winner, a noble mutters about her being a lucky commoner. Sylvia then steps forward, complaining that the match ended too quickly because her opponent was too weak, preventing her from showcasing the required 3 elemental magics. She asks Deculin for another chance. Deculin agrees it would be illogical to end her evaluation this way and permits her to choose any opponent from the room. Sylvia looks directly at him and declares that she wants to fight him. The hall erupts in disbelief, with students calling her insane, but Sylvia remains resolute, seeing this as the opportunity she's longed for. She thinks that she is willing to be seen as a lunatic to seize this chance. Professor Relin is aghast, but Deculin silences him and calmly accepts her challenge, reminding her of the rules she herself set. He will not attack first, and she wins if she can force him to move from his spot. Sylvia agrees, her heart pounding with anticipation. She unleashes a furious barrage of earth and fire magic, declaring that he is the person she will one day defeat. A storm of fiery arrows rains down, but they all veer away from Deculine, who stands perfectly still, untouched. The students watch in awe as Sylvia's relentless attacks prove futile. Deculine points out a habit in her casting that becomes more prominent with larger spells, and as she prepares another attack, he uses magic interference to neutralize it. Her magic fizzles out, and he informs her that she can no longer use magic in his presence. Undeterred, Sylvia declares the combat isn't over and leaps at him for a physical attack, confident in her bodily strength. However, Deculine effortlessly repels her with a wave of telekinetic force, sending her crashing to the ground. Internally, he acknowledges her incredible magic sense and her vessel talent that allows her to use all elements via a special bracelet, musing that the original Deculine would have been jealous. He ends the practical, giving a rare compliment that her performance wasn't bad. The other professors are stunned by his praise, and Ephraim wonders if she too has finally been acknowledged as her friends rush to congratulate her. Later, Deculine meets with a group including a young woman named Yuria, who a system message reveals is possessed by the main character's ex-girlfriend from his original world. Back in his office, Yuria thinks that staying by Deculine's side is her best chance for survival and finding a way home. Deculine receives a new, beautifully crafted wand, which a system window identifies as having numerous powerful traits, including an affinity for the Euclid bloodline's anti-demon power. At dinner, his butler explains their financial troubles are over thanks to the successful auction of antiques Deculine had ordered sold. Later, Deculine reviews past exam questions made by his predecessor, finding them filled with arrogant, impossible challenges. He resolves to create good questions that foster learning and pride. He then discovers a different set of questions in a box, ones that are difficult yet fascinating. Using his comprehension skill, he solves them, and as he does, a beautiful illustration of an unknown woman forms on the paper. He is struck by the perfection of the exam's design, feeling a pang of jealousy for the talent that created it. Meanwhile, at a Sorcerer's Council meeting, Director Yulkin notes the group's unexpected and strong opposition to the suppression of the Bloodshroud race, a sentiment she observes in Deculine as well. It is mentioned that Lady Luna, Deculine's old rival, has returned, and Yulkin mischievously considers the fun that could be had by pitting them against each other, especially given how off Deculine has been lately. On the day of the midterm exam, students are bewildered by its format, a 10-day open-book test taken in individual rooms. The assistant professor then announces Deculine's offer, a letter of recommendation for anyone who achieves a perfect score. This causes a stir, as such a letter is a guaranteed promotion in the difficult Archmage ranking system. Ephraim is initially disgusted by the idea of receiving help from her sworn enemy, but then she fantasizes about using that very recommendation to surpass him and gloat over his downfall, a thought that fills her with a burning desire to ace the test. 4 days later, she is exhausted but captivated by the exam's brilliant design, which brings a profound sense of realization with every solved problem, making her wonder if Deculine truly created it. After spending 30 hours on a single question, she takes a break outside where she encounters Sylvia. When Sylvia reveals she's stuck on question 7, Ephraim states she is on number 8, shocking her rival. Ephraim quickly returns to her room, driven to continue. In his study, Deculine senses a major event is about to unfold as he reads a document. The paper reports that Emperor Krebame is in critical condition. The narrative opens on the state of the empire, with Emperor Krebame in critical condition. He was known as a gentle and mild-mannered ruler who sought a balance of power and did not enforce hostile policies against the Bloodshrouds. The real problem is the new king crowned after his death, who is described as the world's most important and most problematic figure. A red-haired woman, presumably royalty, is shown surrounded by a sinister, bloody aura as the narration foretells that a big change is coming soon. The scene shifts to the last day of Professor Deculine's marathon exam, where many students had dropped out. Despite the difficulty, the students who finished bragged about it like a medal of honor. Instead of just celebrating their freedom, they took time to reflect on what they had learned, an unusual reaction that caught everyone's attention. Even the professors of the Magic Tower were intrigued by the exam questions. At this moment, only 2 students are left attempting the final question, number 8. One of them, a blonde girl named Sylvia, stares intently at the paper, determined to solve this last hurdle despite her exhaustion. As she focuses, she has a sudden epiphany, and a brilliant golden light erupts from the exam paper itself. Elsewhere, a white-haired girl named Ephraim thinks she hears someone call for the professor. Deculin, witnessing the magical phenomenon, considers it a true masterpiece. He reflects that while he created the question, his own limits prevented him from manifesting such beauty. The question was designed to evoke the story of Kim Woo-jin, a man who dreamed of being an artist but lacked talent, yet relentlessly pursued art to move people's hearts. This fusion of Deculin's aesthetic sense and Kim Woo-jin's artistic dream creates a comforting spectacle for both of them. Deculin mentally commends the student's success. Sylvia is overcome with emotion, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. An ethereal voice encourages her to become an archmage, praising her incredible talent, as the words "family of archmages" glow with golden light. Sylvia has a profound realization that magic itself is beautiful. Back in the classroom, a proctor informs Ephraim that her time is up. Ephraim accepts this, thinking it's a shame. Her friend consoles her, mentioning that only 2 people even attempted the final question and that Sylvia, being a monster, solved everything. Ephraim sighs, admitting she is jealous. Later, Ephraim finds that all thoughts of recommendation letters and Deculin have vanished from her mind, replaced only by her pure inquisitiveness as a mage and a deep desire for knowledge. She decides that she wants to answer the final question too. Her friend encourages her, and Ephraim resolves to solve it on her own time. As she walks through the campus, exhausted from the marathon exam, she laments that instead of a sense of accomplishment, all that awaits her is a door marred with graffiti and a cold bed. Several days later, Ephraim watches a beautiful magical display before her friend Julie calls out to her. They discuss their upcoming trip, and Ephraim expresses her joy at having finally solved the exam question, calling it the best magical experience she's ever had. Julie then asks if she's heard the news about Professor Deculin. The scene shifts to the Magic Tower, where mages are excitedly discussing Deculin's exam paper, calling it a completely new way of experiencing magic. Deculin has become a hot topic on the floating island and is invited to give a special lecture on the solutions. Standing before the lecture hall, Deculin muses that the exam paper gained more interest than he thought, noting a new event quest for the lecture that rewards plus 30 mana and a hefty fee. He begins his lecture, introducing himself as Deculin, a Mon or Crank mage. In the audience, a green-haired woman named Luna von Schwarot McQueen whispers to her companion that the question must be plagiarized, certain that Deculin is incapable of such brilliance. The lecture proceeds smoothly, with Deculin using concepts from previous classes to help the attendees understand. When he moves to the 6th question, a woman named Adeline asks a complex question about combining magic for maximum destruction. Deculin notices the chairman is also present, and assuming she is suspicious of him, decides to entertain her. He calmly explains that she can simply add a central circuit in a linear form. Adeline continues to pepper him with questions, all of which he answers with ease. Seeing he has only 10 minutes left, he announces he will skip the explanation for the final question to save time. At this, Luna stands and asks if he truly believes his own thoughts on question number 8 are correct. Deculin asks her to clarify, and she directly questions whether he himself wrote the question, causing the audience to murmur about plagiarism. Deculin acknowledges that being inspired by others' concepts is common, but then declares that this creation is entirely his own. He manifests a stunningly complex and beautiful magical array in the air, which amazes the audience. He explains that this on-the-spot creation is different from the one in the exam question, and asks Luna if this sufficiently answers her query. He concludes the lecture, receiving a system notification for quest completion. As he leaves, he thinks about the bad blood between his character and Luna according to the game's settings. He muses that he is surrounded by haters, and a problem will likely arise soon. He then spots a woman with long black hair glaring at him with a look of disgust, and finds her strangely familiar. He suddenly remembers her, Charlotte, his peer from university. He greets her, and she retorts coolly before he cuts her off to ask about the well-being of Princess Maho. The narrative confirms Deculin's only interest is in the princess whom Charlotte guards. He tells a panicked Charlotte that he will be the lifeline to save her comrade from the path of death. Later, in a crumbling ruin, Deculin offers Charlotte a communication crystal ball, telling her to contact him when she's ready. She scoffs at the idea of accepting help from him, but he calmly states that there is no time. Back with Princess Maho, Charlotte is visibly stressed. The princess tries to comfort her, aware that her brother's followers will soon arrive to eliminate her. The princess admits she is nervous, having fled to the Empire under the guise of studying, but knows the next emperor will not leave her be. She offers Charlotte a pouch of money she has saved to hire more mercenaries. Charlotte initially refuses, but the princess insists the money is for all of them. Charlotte gratefully accepts, vowing to hire more protection. Just as she speaks of facing any danger together, assassins crash through the window. Charlotte, realizing their desperate situation, sends a message to Deculin begging for help. In his study, Deculin receives her plea while his sister, Uriel, enters to discuss an official request for the Magic Tower debutantes to take a field trip to their territory, Hydecane. Deculin immediately refuses, his attention fixed on Charlotte's message. He tells Charlotte through the crystal that there is only one way out for the princess, a dangerous route through the crevice canyon. Charlotte is horrified, but he asks if she truly believes an ordinary route would be any safer. He tells her to trust him, declaring they will cross the crevice canyon. In a later conversation, Deculin reaffirms his plan to Charlotte, who expresses doubt. He tells her not to worry, as he will personally guide them. When she questions his motives, he bluntly states that he is more intelligent than her and wants the princess to live so his family and territory can benefit. He frames it as a deal and tells her to meet him at the entrance to Crevice in 3 days, warning that failure to arrive means they don't deserve to live. Charlotte agrees, and Deculin receives an exclusive quest notification. 3 days later, Deculin arranges the student field trip to Hydecane, explaining to his assistant that its proximity to the canyon is convenient for him to slip away. He gives a chilling warning to the student's instructor that if they cause any trouble in his territory, they will regret it. While observing the debutantes, he praises Ephraim's firework magic, awarding her 10 points for its balance of destructive and ductile properties, shocking the instructor who had given her a low score. That night, as Deculin prepares to leave, Ephraim confronts him. She demands to know why he has been helping her, asking if it is because of her father. Deculin tells her to figure it out herself and rides away. Ephraim shouts after him that she will become his subordinate to expose the truth about her father's death and to one day surpass him. As Deculin waits at the canyon's entrance, he sends his horse away due to the dense demonic energy. Charlotte and her party arrive, battered and bloodied, and he commends them for making it. A mysterious masked figure is shown observing details on several holographic screens. Deculin introduces himself to Princess Maho and assures her of their safety. He reads a letter from Charlotte's adventure team and calls it disgusting. He tells the princess it will be okay and they set off. As they travel, he reveals the letter warned of 37 assassins and demonic entities called Dianantes chasing them. He explains that Dianantes are summoned through dark magic contracts, meaning the mages of ashes are hunting them relentlessly. However, Charlotte finds hope in the fact that Deculin's family, the Euclene, were once known as exorcists. A system window confirms the Euclene bloodline can purify demonic energy and enhance their magic. The dense energy of the canyon temporarily boosts Deculin's mana quality to rank 4, a level possessed by only the most powerful individuals in the world. As Charlotte urges him to hurry, Deculin tells her to calm down, explaining that haste could lead to demonic poisoning. He silently resolves to protect her, even at the cost of his own life. A swarm of demonic bats attacks, and Deculin declares it inevitable, preparing to handle them. He unleashes a swirling vortex of pure energy that annihilates the entire swarm in a single, devastating attack. He then calmly tells the group to move on. As they continue, they are beset by more small monsters. Deculin senses a greater threat and issues a warning into the darkness, telling an unseen foe that if they come any closer, their limbs will be ripped off. A voice laughs, praising his instincts for a man about to die. In a dark, cavernous canyon, Deculin instructs Charlotte to take the princess and immediately head for the Uran Republic. Charlotte expresses her shock and hesitation, but Deculin coldly asks if she is pretending to worry about him, dismissing it as unnecessary, which visibly irritates her. He tells her to look over there, and as she turns, a monstrous shadowy creature wreathed in purple energy slaughters a group of soldiers, their screams echoing as blue magical energy erupts from the violent clash. Deculin calmly asks if she has made her decision, reminding her that her job is to escape as quickly as possible. A knight urges the princess to follow her while Charlotte points in horror at the chaos unfolding. She asks what the creature is, and Deculin identifies it as a Dianant, again telling her to take the princess and leave. Charlotte protests that he cannot face them all alone, but another of their companions, Ron, boldly states he is going to kill it. The princess's attendant, Maho, tells Charlotte that she will stay to help Deculin and that Charlotte must get the princess away from the battle. She reassures Charlotte not to feel bad, as she can assist Euclene later, once the princess has secured her power. With a wave of her hand, she summons several wood steel guards to act as their escort. As Charlotte flees with the princess, She calls back to Dekuline that she will see him at the Uran Republic. The Dianant commands its shadowy minions to pursue the escaping women, but Dekuline stands in their way with a smirk. The creature mockingly tells Dekuline to worry about himself, calling him an arrogant mage and boasting that he cannot be killed by wood steel without mana, nor by magic, which is dispersed by the demonic energy filling the canyon. Dekuline internally notes the creature's overconfidence, acknowledging that while it is true a phantom-like Dianant can't be killed by normal means and the location is poor for magic, he holds a distinct advantage. In this place, his mana quality is amplified and his recovery rate is increased. A system notification confirms his Midas touch. Level 5, as he reveals he had already infused the surrounding wood steel with the ability while they were moving. Spikes of glowing blue wood steel erupt from the ground, impaling the Dianant. Dekuline gathers his energy, preparing another assault and thinking it is now time, before quickly deciding to wait just a moment longer. He is enveloped in a swirling vortex of blue energy and razor-sharp wood steel shards which he then unleashes upon the Dianant, tearing it to pieces in a spectacular torrent of power. He watches the destructive aftermath, quietly impressed by the result. Elsewhere, having escaped the canyon, the princess stumbles and coughs up blood into her hand. Charlotte rushes to her side, asking if she is all right, and the princess confirms she only feels nauseous. Charlotte identifies the nausea as a preliminary symptom of demonic energy poisoning and urges her to hold on just a little longer. The princess then spots someone in the distance, calling out to her uncle. A man with white hair, identified as Jilland, the Uran Republic's Minister of Internal Affairs and the princess's great-uncle, greets them. He commends them and apologizes for only being able to wait for them there, but the princess expresses her gratitude. Charlotte introduces herself, and Jilland asks if she escorted the princess alone, to which she replies that others helped. The rest of their surviving party arrives, and Charlotte asks the minister if they can wait for the others, which he allows. As the sun sets, Charlotte gazes back toward the canyon, privately worrying if Professor Dekuline is truly all right. She reflects on how the princess gave her all before catching herself and getting flustered. The remaining knights who survived the initial ambush finally catch up, one of them joyfully exclaiming that they are alive before calling out to Dekuline and Ron, who are presumably still behind. Later, Jilland announces he is heading back, but Ron insists they need a break. Jilland dismisses the need for rest, stating he has done his job and Ron can fill them in on the details. Charlotte thinks back to her earlier encounter with Dekuline. She had thought he was picking a fight, but now understands he put his own life on the line to help them escape. Feeling a debt of gratitude, she spots Dekuline walking away and calls out his name. As he turns, she offers him a sincere thank you. Dekuline coolly accepts her thanks, but then notes their unwashed appearance and states he has no desire to touch their hands, infuriating Charlotte with his arrogance. As he departs, the princess calls out for him to take care and promises to repay him, while her attendant cheerfully thanks him as well. A system window notifies Dekuline of the completion of the exclusive quest Traverse, awarding him store currency and mana. That night, Charlotte is summoned to Minister Jilland's office. He invites her to sit comfortably, but she feels anxious, worrying about his intentions. He addresses her, and she reflects on the princess's recent change in fortune, from being on the verge of death in a succession war to suddenly becoming the Grand Duke's heir, all of which happened with shocking speed. She asks the minister if anyone else knows about this development, but he denies it, claiming he just heard the news from the Grand Duke himself. Jilland clarifies that his support is a political deal, meant to benefit his own family and territory, and tells her not to overthink it. He advises her that instead of worrying, she should focus on how the princess, once in power, can help Eucline. Charlotte recalls Dekuline saying something similar, and a chilling realization dawns on her. He must have calculated and predicted this entire outcome. She thinks of him as a monster, a faint smile playing on her lips as she looks out over the estate and wonders if he made it back safely. Dekuline awakens in his room, the sun not yet risen, and wonders if he only slept for 2 hours. He muses on his Iron Man trait, which erases all fatigue with minimal rest, forcing him awake despite the arduous day he had. Deciding to begin training, he conjures blue telekinetic energy in his hand. He reflects on his relentless training regimen, constantly identifying and improving weaknesses, and how it was only possible because he was Dekuline, a man driven by personality traits like routine, competitiveness, and a strong mentality. A pang of regret hits him as he thinks how much better things would have been if he, as Kim Woo-jin, had possessed this drive earlier. A servant knocks, and he tells them he is coming out now. While dressing, he thinks that if he had been this way in his past life as Kim Woo-jin, the woman he loved would not have left him. Annoyed by the Iron Man trait forcing him awake, he feels that 22 hours of consciousness a day is far too long for someone trapped in a game. As he stands by the window, an ethereal image of a woman with long, dark hair appears, whispering his name, which startles him. Fragments of memories from his past life with her flash through his mind, sitting in a cafe, holding hands, lying together. He pushes the thoughts away, questioning why they are surfacing now and reminding himself that Deculin is merely a game character. Standing alone in a grand hall, he wonders about the strange feeling of longing that has overcome him. A woman with long brown hair approaches, and he is struck by her familiar appearance. The image of Ara from his past life fills his mind as he realizes the profound resemblance between the two women.